Chair, we are live on YouTube. You're welcome to go ahead and start the meeting, please.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this online meeting of the Councillor Standards Panel on the 10th of July 2025. My name is Councillor Lynn Jones. I will be chairing this meeting. This meeting is to be held virtually via Zoom and streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that the participation in the meeting indicates consent to the audio and video being streamed live, and acknowledgement that after the meeting it will continue to be available in the public domain. It is important that all participants recognise that the meeting remotely requires a different approach than the meeting in person. Firstly, it would be useful if all panel members could introduce themselves so the public are aware who is in this meeting and their role they are undertaking. So I am Councillor Lynn Jones, as I said, and I am chairman of the meeting. And we have Councillor Brar. Could you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Brar. I'm substituting for Councillor Werner.
Thank you. And Councillor Baskerville.
Good morning, Councillor Clyde Baskerville, Pinton's Green, voting member of the panel.
Is there any other councillors online?
Yeah, Councillor Gertzing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor Gosling's online as well, if I can see.
Yes, I'm online. Yeah, and I'm substituting for Sally Conneran.
Thank you very much. And I think Catherine Del Campo in the background there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically invite you to do so. For virtual participants, you can indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand in Zoom. This is then shown against the participant list in order of request. I will keep to that order of speakers. There should be no jumping in. Once I've invited you to speak, before you do so, please state your name and the capacity in which you are speaking, if appropriate. I will ask officers to speak at appropriate times. If any individual attempts to disrupt the meeting, I'm able to use my powers in the Constitution to adjourn the meeting or have the individual removed from the virtual meeting. We will now start on the agenda items. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. As you've heard, we've got apologies from Councillor Werner and Councillor Conneran, and substituting is Councillor Brar and Councillor Gosling.
Thank you very much. So any declarations of interest from anyone?
I know of.
No. Okay. And then we move on to the minutes of the meeting held Monday the 9th of December 2025. Are there any comments for those minutes? No. So can we take them as approved, councillors? I'm getting a lot of nods. Yes.
Presumably it was 2024.
2024, thank you. December 2024. Moving on to, we'll take those as approved. Moving on to the Monitoring Officer Annual Report. And I'd like to bring in Elaine Brown, our Monitoring Officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So just a bit of background, we have a legal duty to have arrangements in place to deal with member conduct. That's not just for the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead as the principal authority. We also have a duty to do this for parish and town councils. So this report provides a panel with an annual update on matters relating to member conduct. I just really want to as well add that it's a really important area to consider. The most recent statutory guidance on best value standards and intervention lists a high number of upheld code of conduct complaints as an indicator of potential failure of a local authority. So it's really important that we do monitor the number of complaints that we receive, and luckily you'll see in a minute we're quite our numbers are actually dropping, and a few years ago we did have a bit of an issue, but things are on a good trajectory. But we always have to keep this in mind because, as you're aware, we're currently in receipt of exceptional financial support, and this means that MHCLG, they're paying a really keen interest in a range of governance issues, and they've indicated that one of these indicators includes member behaviour. So it's really important that we're aware of that. And actually, we have got some code of conduct training It's going to take place on Monday, the 14th of July at 6 p.m. So that's next Monday. It is going to be online. So if you could all attend and you could get your fellow councillors to attend, that would be great. It is going to be, the recording will be available afterwards, but we're not going to do death by PowerPoint. There's going to be an element of interactivity to keep it interesting. So if people could attend live, that would be great. So again, it's really important. If I now take you to the paper that's been published, if I just take you through some of the numbers, I don't know if anyone's, before I get into the detail, has anybody got any questions at all? No, I will take you through the detail, and maybe some questions will emerge once I've done that. So if I take you to the table in paragraph 2.6 of the report, this just details the number of complaints in the financial year 2024-2025 that were received from parish councils and for RBWM. And you can see for RBWM, we had 9 complaints received, which is slightly lower than last year, which is good. For 9 of these complaints, it was found there was no breach. 2 of those complaints have been referred for further investigation. So they are currently with an external investigator. And what will happen with those particular complaints is, if the external investigator thinks that there could be a potential breach of the code, they will be brought before this panel for a decision to be made. So we may be having a panel in the future, we may not. That is still outstanding. And for parish complaints, you can see that there were 12 complaints, 11 were no breach found. 1 was actually withdrawn, and it is sometimes common for people to make a complaint, and then sometimes with parish councils, either the clerk speaks to them or I will have a chat with the complainant and explain the process, and sometimes those complaints get withdrawn. I think sometimes people don't quite understand the rationale behind the code of conduct regime. Sometimes I'm not saying it is here, but sometimes it can be used as a weapon. And sometimes, I know historically there was a bit of tit for tat. And if I take you onto the table in paragraph 2.8, this actually details the number of complaints over various years. And you can see at Windsor and Maidenhead in 2021-2022, we had 79 complaints. And there was a huge issue with, as I just mentioned, people weaponising the code of conduct, people making tit-for-tat complaints. And as you can see over the years, those complaints have come down in number. Unfortunately, for parish councils, they have increased in number. And as I've detailed in the report, we have 14 parish councils in the borough, but all of those complaints from the year 2024-2025, they've actually resulted from only 4 of the parish councils. So there, it just shows there might be some issues going on in some of the parish councils. I said last year in my report, I had to speak to clerks and advise that mediation takes place between certain councillors, because some of the issues that were being raised as code of conduct complaints, they related to a breakdown. There was an obvious breakdown in relationships between certain individuals. And although it's tempting to do a code of conduct complaint in order to highlight those, it's probably not the best course of action, and it doesn't necessarily solve those relationship problems. So, it's something we are continuing to work on. And I said in the last meeting, I don't really have jurisdiction to go in and solve the problems of parish councils. I will try and help clerks where I can, but it's really for those parish councils to engage, perhaps mediation at an early stage if it appears that there are issues between its members, and hopefully if things get resolved early, then you can prevent future issues and you can prevent code of conduct complaints, because it doesn't look good for parish councils when they have lots of code of conduct complaints. I'm going to go on to the themes from the code of conduct complaints. Before I do that, has anybody got any questions on the numbers at all? No, I don't think I'm seeing any questions. So quite interesting. So last year, the theme for both code of conduct complaints in parishes and RBWM was councillor behaviour in meetings. Now that's remained the same for parish councils. That was the main source of code of conduct complaints. And these days it is quite hard, because some of the complaints that you get, obviously this particular meeting, this is being live streamed and it's going to be available to view on YouTube for the next 5 years. So it is more difficult, and I think councillors have to be more aware of their behaviour in meetings, because they are recorded. The audio visual equipment that we have is you know, of very high quality, and you know, if people are acting or saying things, it's recorded and it's there for 5 years. So you know, we have had code of conduct complaints where someone hasn't necessarily been at a meeting, but they've actually subsequently watched the meeting and they've put in a complaint. So, you know, it's a lot harder. You know, the eyes of the world are on councillors and councillor behaviour these days. So it's just something really for councillors to bear in mind, and we'll mention that when we do the training next week. So that was last year's theme for Windsor and Maidenhead. This year, it's social media. Most of the complaints, the majority of the complaints that we've received about RBWM councillors has been about conduct on social media, about posts that councillors have made on social media. And again, it's one of those things, if a councillor posts on social media, it's there for everybody to see. And even if somebody has redacted that post or they've taken that post down, people can take screenshots these days. And if something's out there in the public domain, it's very hard to retract it. So when we do our training on Monday, social media is going to be one of the main focuses. We're going to talk about social media. And the LGA has actually got some really good guidance on social media. And that's something we're going to signpost councillors to when we do the training on Monday, because it can be very difficult for councillors, because I think there are lots of people on there, people are baiting other people, and I think it's just really about making sure, we're going to make sure councillors just think before they post. Things can get very heated quite quickly on social media, and as I've said before, once you post something, it's very hard to redact it. So it's just about thinking. So I think that's really common, not just with RBWM, but when I speak to my colleagues in other local authorities, social media, complaints about posts on social media is probably the most prevalent reason for code of conduct complaints in the current times. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions or comments.
Well, obviously, you know, the reducing numbers are encouraging. You know, that's something that we should be very pleased about. But social media is obviously an issue, and it is hard, especially when people put out misinformation, to then not have to answer that and as a councillor, open yourself up then to other comments. So, but Councillor Baskerville.
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking, how many of the 79 complainants in 2022 are still councillors or involved in the council?
I don't, unfortunately. Thank you. It's a very good question. I actually don't have that data. I need to go and look into that, because obviously it's from quite some time ago. And the thing is, the problem before, these were not upheld complaints. These were just complaints that were received. So it's quite hard to gauge from that, because it was acknowledged there was a massive problem with councillor on councillor tit for tat complaints. So just because a councillor had a complaint made against them doesn't necessarily mean it was a valid complaint, if that makes sense. But I could certainly look into that information and provide that to you.
The reason I ask it is that, you know, this could be the main reason for the big drop in numbers. That's all. If they're no longer councillors, then they're no longer around, are they?
No, I mean that could be one case. What I would say, and I said this in my last meeting, the previous monitoring officer, Emma Duncan, she did an awful lot of really good work with councillors and with leaders of political groups to reduce that number, because it was becoming untenable. It was taking up an awful lot of officer time and council resource. As you can imagine, you know, with that number of complaints, you're going to need a whole team of people dealing with them. So she did an awful lot of work, and we used to, at that point, we used to record code of conduct complaints and report them on, if it was a member complaint, we used to record them by political group. We don't do that any longer because we don't have any need to, and we don't want to prevent people from making a code of conduct complaint. But what I would say is the majority of code of conduct complaints in the last year have not been at RBWM, have not been from councillors. They have been from members of the public rather than councillors. So if we did start having that problem again, we would look into ways of trying to stop that. But thankfully, and as you can see with the reduced numbers, we really are in a good place in terms of code of conduct complaints.
Thanks,
Thank
Elaine. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Elaine. Yeah, I've had a look at the report, and yeah, it's very much on the same sort of trajectory, I suppose, as the previous year. Complaints have gone down. Obviously, we know why. I mean, it's obviously public record. I made it clear at the last meeting last year that there has been a change of leadership. The culture of bullying within the council, it's very well documented right at the top of the council. There was clear bullying.
Councillor Singh, we don't need to go through that again. It's a matter of public record.
Yeah. But, sorry, I'm just getting on to the point. And that's why these complaints tick for tack, and the weaponisation of the complaint process took part. I think it's very important to point it out, because what happened was, not only did it take up a lot of officer time, it put pressure on councillors. Many councillors had code of conducts lodged against them when they were representing their residents, which was not fair. And also, equally important, there was a financial cost on the borough of these complaints. Some of these complaints were costing us tens of thousands of pounds. And not only that, we lost two very good monitoring officers, Emma Duncan and Mary Severin. Both obviously moved away. We've managed to hold on to you, Elaine, so that's good. We hopefully will keep you here for many more years. Now, my only question, I suppose, at the moment is that we are still getting these parish council complaints, and that's still very concerning. Obviously, we've got a responsibility there. And last year we said, well, obviously there was going to be some training and some support there. I just want to see if that's been undertaken, and if we are making progress. I mean, I know that the figures actually show they're still sort of around about sort of same number. They've dropped slightly, but probably not enough.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Singh. It's a good question. I think I mentioned last year, my jurisdiction in terms of going into parish councils is limited. Not only do I not have jurisdiction, I don't have a budget. We have limited resource. So I where there are issues, I do agree to speak to the clerks, and we do try and, I think I said before, I try and encourage clerks to go down a route of mediation if it's obvious that the source of the complaint is that individuals are just not getting on and they don't have a good relationship. I mean, in some ways, you could say it's bad that it's only that out of all of the parish councils, the complaints only result from 4 of them. But I suppose you could also look at it and say, well, it's actually good because many of those complaints arise from the same incident. So you might have one particular parish meeting and lots of the complaints might arise from that particular meeting. So in some ways, it could be seen as a positive. And I think, although it may not be reflected in the actual numbers, I obviously can't discuss that, it's confidential, but looking behind it, I do think there has been an improvement in parish councils, and I hope that we see that going forward.
Okay, thank you. Chair, can I just come back with one follow-up?
Go on then. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Right, and it's just regarding the two complaints which are outstanding at the moment. I don't want you going into detail about the complaints, but these have been put forward for further investigation. What I want to ask is, do we have a timeline process? I know some councils have like a 6-week process, but they'll come back with a decision on that, because obviously you know, there are complainants and victims involved in these complaints, and I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we get closure in sort of timely fashions.
No, thank you. So I've recently spoken to the investigator, and hopefully her investigation, obviously depending on her ability to be able to speak to the relevant parties, so there are witnesses, there are the complainants, there are the subject member, she has to interview them, and she has to write a report. Hopefully she will be able to get that done by the end of June. So it will depend on her report. If her report says there is a potential breach, then we would arrange a code of conduct, we would arrange a panel hearing, and all of the parties involved would be made aware of that. So it's one of these things, sometimes it can take a lot longer because you have to gather all of the evidence. You know, I think you mentioned earlier, Councillor Singh, it's very stressful for, you know, the members involved. When you have, you know, it's stressful if you are making the complaint and you've had to make a complaint. It's very stressful for you. It's very stressful for the member who has a complaint made against them. So these things have to be done carefully. There has to be a proper investigation carried out before we then go on and take it to the panel. So these things can sometimes take some time, but those individuals concerned, they should have, that the investigator should have been in contact with them. If not, then I would advise them to come and speak to me. Sorry, Councillor Gosling, I think, has got her hand up.
Unfortunately, digitally, it's not working. So it's my computer or me, but probably me. Yeah, my question is about social media. What actions have, I mean, has it been detrimental recently? What actions have been taken about those councillors that are causing us problems, perhaps not realising what they're doing? Have we taken action? Is that action in process?
So no, thanks, Councillor Gosling. That's a really good question. So we haven't actually had any complaints upheld, as you can see. So there haven't been any sanctions in terms of the actual code of conduct process. And I think I said last time, those sanctions are actually quite limited. But what I have done is I have regularly written to group leaders where there have been issues on social media, and I have I've asked group leaders to talk to their members, you know, about social media, and just reminding them that even if the behaviour doesn't quite meet the threshold of being a code of conduct issue, they still need to realise that it looks really bad to residents when people misbehave on social media. So I've done that, and to be fair to the group leaders, I think they've passed that message on, and I think there seems to be recently, because obviously the results we're talking about now, that was the last financial year. I have seen, and I'm really hoping it does continue, I have seen a reduction in code of conduct complaints about social media. So when we do the training on Monday, again, it's just going to be to remind councillors. It's really hard. Things get heated on social media. Councillor Jones made a very good point earlier that people put false information, and, you know, councillors obviously want to come back at that. So it's just about, we're just going to make people mindful, and the local government association's got some really good guidance, and it tells you about, you know, some of the obvious things that at the time might not seem apparent, that if somebody is harassing you on social media as a councillor, you can block people, you can delete posts, you can ignore them. You don't have to always come back and respond. And I know that's quite difficult, especially when somebody is giving out false information. But so hopefully the training will be really useful, and we'll see a further reduction in numbers of complaints.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. Is there anybody else that would like to comment on this report? Don't see anybody. Okay, so I would really ask councillors present to encouraged colleagues to attend on Monday, to further to understand the issues behind it, but also to further their understanding of the code of conduct process, because I think that is something that once you understand the process and exactly what can and can't be done and what reaches the threshold, that makes a big difference. So, and has anybody else got any comments regarding that? No, can't see any.
Councillor Singh does.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to touch on one section of the report, talking about the within your department, Elaine. I understand you've got two new deputies in there now, Helena Stevenson and Anthony Lanham. Just wanted to ask you about this appointment, and in terms of sort of like EFS and funding and value for money and everything. Could you just explain to me are these new roles for these officers, and because obviously the complaints have gone down, and the workload have gone down, but are they working on other areas? Just if you just explain about that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor Singh. So they're not, we haven't brought in new people. So it's just for if I'm on leave. So Helena is actually the head of legal services, but she's actually on maternity leave at the moment. But she, when she comes back, she will be the deputy. So if I'm on leave, she can act for me, but she doesn't receive, it's not a separate role. She's got a substantive role as the head of legal. And obviously as she's on maternity leave, I needed another deputy. So Anthony Lenahan, again, he's a barrister and he is our principal lead for litigation. So any litigation matters, he's the expert on that. And he is also deputy. So he's got a substantive role. The deputy monitoring officer is just as and when I am either on holiday or if I was to be ill, then he could act on my behalf. So it's a very good question, because it does look as though we need less resource. So it's not extra resource. They do have a substantive role.
Oh, thank you. And just so to come back on that, I just want a bit more detail. Is Anthony's role, is that full time? Is it?
Yes, that's correct. It is full time. Yes.
Okay, and that's so we got full time counsel in.
Yes, no, you do. Yeah.
And does that role stretch across to other areas rather than the member standards? Does that go across?
Oh yes, no. He is the lead. I think I mentioned he is the lead litigation lawyer. So he manages the other litigation lawyer, and he is responsible for undertaking prosecutions on behalf of the council. He attends licensing panels. I don't know if any of you are members of licensing and planning, mainly licensing, school appeals. He's got a broad, I would say the monitoring officer work is a very, very small part of his work, and it's only when I'm unable to undertake a matter, maybe there's a conflict of interest, or I'm on holiday, so it's a very small part of his job.
Okay, thank you very much, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll go to Councillor Brar and then Councillor Da Costa. Councillor Brar?
You're muted, Councillor Brar.
Okay. Just wanted to ask a question. Obviously, there are 14 parish councillors in the borough. How many parish councillors out of the 14 have, the most complaints? Code of conduct.
I actually don't know off the top of my head, and I don't want to. I think someone asked me that last year, and I don't want to create more issues within parish councils by sort of broadcasting that publicly. But what I would say is, I mentioned earlier, the complaints, although it looks like a high number of complaints, they relate to less incidents than in previous years. So I would say it is a good sign that things are improving in parish councils, even though the numbers might not clearly reflect that.
Yeah, because my parish council, I don't think anybody ever actually complained, apart from once, I think. Yeah.
No, you would probably know. So
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Councillor Da Costa.
Thank you, Lynn. The question is really simple. Have we got any other sessions rather than just Monday in case people are unable to attend, for example, on Monday?
So unfortunately we don't, but we are going to, it's an online training session and we will record that session. So it will be available for councillors to watch. I mentioned earlier, it's better if people can attend live purely because there's going to be an interactive element, which we don't want to do death by PowerPoint and send councillors to sleep. So we want it to be an enjoyable experience. So not as yet, but we will plan some in future sessions in the future.
I'm sorry, I have to admit this. I have a speed awareness course on Monday, so I have to attend that. Thank you.
Councillor Singh, have you got another question?
Yeah, just on that the training. I just want to check: are parish councillors invited on that training as well session on Monday?
No, so we haven't, unfortunately. The reason is what we wanted to do is this one is quite council specific because we have been asked, it came out in one of our ethical governance audits, that councillors need to align their values to the council's hero values. So part of the training involves that. So it wouldn't be particularly relevant. There will be later on in the training, there'll be a broader code of conduct session, but we are going to be talking about the council's hero values and how those hero values align with the Nolan principles. So it probably wouldn't be relevant for parish councillors.
Oh, okay. So they don't have the hero, the one team stuff.
No, those are specific to RBWM.
So I think it might be good to share some of the training with them, because whether you can do it in 2 phases and you can clip it and send, because obviously the Nolan principles do apply to them. And I think parishes might appreciate something.
Yeah, no, we can certainly look into that. And there's a host of information, there's a wealth of information on the Local Government Association website, because there's a huge training pack for code of conduct and there's lots of guidance. And I, regularly signpost clerks to that guidance. Also, parish councils have an organisation called NALC, which I believe stands for the National Association of Local Councils. And many parish and town councils are a member of NALC. And NALC provide training and resources that's maybe more directed towards parish and town councils. But it's a very good organisation and they do a lot of good work.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, I reiterate that the parish councils can get training from NALC or any other area.
Yes.
And it's not the council's responsibility to provide that training. That's another cost on the council. Parish councils have their precept and they provide training for their councillors, and every parish councillor has to sign when they, as we do, to uphold the Nolan principles within their parish council when they accept that position. So the parish councils have their resources, particularly for their parish councils. Okay.
Can I just come?
Yeah.
Just come back on that, Lynn. Do you know? Yeah, that's a good point. But the issue is, like, with these parish complaints, the responsibility obviously falls on the borough to look into these complaints. So what's happening is we're getting a cost added on to us in terms of time to investigate. I'm just thinking, like, I know it may not be our responsibility, but can we offset that by providing some support proactively up front?
From my understanding of complaints coming into parishes, that would not. There is a part, parish councils, I think, or residents have found the code of conduct for parish councils and now using it. I think, there is also a teaching. We need to teach the residents that the code of conduct isn't something that they should be using in certain areas. And that is down to the clerk to talk to those people to explain that to them. So I think it's a number of things. And as Elaine has said, this is our distinct events. rather than a number of different complaints. So putting in that training for everybody for, say, 3 or 4 distinct events that have happened over a year that have encountered a large number of complaints isn't really cost effective.
Okay.
Understand the situation and have an education of both parishes and those residents as to how to use the code of conduct.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't see any more hands. So again, I'd encourage people to go back to their colleagues and to attend the training on Monday. Other than that, I will close the meeting. Thank you very much.